So I wanted to make this video based upon what is going on in the country at the moment and the things that are happening. I know this is not my normal, what I normally post, what I normally do, but I've decided that it just has to be said, okay? And so right at the moment, I'm sure you have all noticed the anti-ICE movements and the other movements that are appearing after, like the No Kings movement, the anti-ICE movements, all the protests that are kind of popping up all over the country at the moment. And I wanted to point out things about what's going on, that why movements and social movements succeed and versus why some of them fail, right? So the very first thing about why a lot of social movements fail is internal divisions or factionalism, right? It's pretty much where you have conflicting opinions about what the movement should be or how it should move forward and how it works. And it can cause it to splinter into these different groups, which then usually ends up causing the social movement to kind of like wither down and die, right? The way you keep away from that is by keeping your overall intended goal the same, like the anti-ICE movement, keeping it as anti-ICE, right? That is your biggest thing about making it reform for ICE, right? Their biggest thing is not only to get ICE out of the cities, but also to reform what ICE is back to at least what it was before. Another reason why a movement might fail is because of resource scarcity, lack of funding, lack of time, lack of human resources, and lack of people wanting to be a part of it can lead to a large decline in the social movements. The way you can best help with that is by continuing to show up for these movements, continuing to support them, continuing to give monetarily to these people that need funding and that need people to support them, right? That's a great way to keep a movement going. Repression, essentially what's going on right now. Repression is essentially what's happening right now, where the government or people, usually authority figures, step in to try to make it harder to organize, harder to be to show up to these things, and harder to stay. Essentially, they want to make it so that you cannot come together as a people, right? That's the whole idea. And so that can make it very hard for a movement to stick. And at the moment, this one is doing pretty well with that, where people are seeing what's going on and have decided that that is not okay, that this is something that needs to be dealt with, right? The lack of clear goals and strategy right now, I think they have a very clear goal, right? No Kings movement and ICE, they have a very clear goal of what they want to do. They want to either dismantleize what is currently happening, like with ICE, they want to just get rid of it entirely, or when it has the No Kings movement, they are fighting against things like fascism and a authoritarian government, which is something that we are very quickly coming up onto, right? Which is what they're trying to avoid, right? So those, I would say, in these regards, the current movements, they're doing a good job on when they have very clear goals, and they have, now their strategy isn't as clear half the time, but they can always work on that to make that better. And then you have negative rebels that can become a problem. Negative rebels essentially means that where some members are engaging, where they're essentially saying, like, well, you either have them in one of two ways, right? You either have the people that say, if you aren't doing it this way, or essentially they're gatekeepers, right? They're saying, if you aren't doing it the way I'm doing it, you're doing it wrong and you're not truly part of this movement. And that usually alienates other people from the movement, right? Or you have people in the movement that at first they were super into it and they were like, yeah, this is great. But then they didn't see what they wanted to see happening from the movement. And so they start to attack the movement. They start to try and dissuade other people from being in that movement because they didn't get the thing that they wanted from it, or they don't think that it's happening fast enough. So you can also have negative rebels that pop up in movements that can kind of cause them to kind of like wither and die a bit, right? Which can be not great, And what's currently happening in all of these movements, the anti-ICE movements, the No Kings movements, they are great, actually. You're all doing a very good job at doing these movements and doing these protests. And being at these protests, they are great. I mean, people are usually quite nice. They're usually very supportive and kind when you're there, which is amazing. What's going to continue to be a problem for a lot of these protests, it's going to be harder to organize. You're going to need to be a part of social groups and all the things, and you're going to need to push social groups online that help you with organizing your movement and your group, right? That's going to be the hardest thing, is to organize people, especially across such a large country. You're going to want to make like coalitions or organizations or groups, right, that align with your movement that people can join or be a part of. Like, I think the biggest one that's popping up at the moment is the Rebel Bird Alliance, right? Where where there was an artist in Minnesota that made the Minnesota bird as like in the idea of the Star Wars rebellion symbol, and that has recently become a very big symbol for a lot of people of not only just anti-ICE but anti-fascism, right? And it's becoming like a big group and a big coalition of a lot of people because you can individualize that state by state by making your state bird part of this coalition of people, right? That is a great way to organize people and to get people into your movement, and to keep it kind of like fueled and ready to go so that you don't, but also it doesn't create internal division, right? It still keeps people feeling like they're seen and feeling like they're heard within their own states and areas, right? Without them having conflicting views or beliefs against one another, right? It also makes them all feel seen and avoid splintering up the group, right? So it doesn't just feel like, oh, it's only to this one place, it's only for them, it's for everybody, right? And that, it does very much help. But I think the biggest thing is the biggest thing that has to be happen right now, and I think that needs to be said, is that everything's going on with the No Kings movements and the ICE movements. I know this is gonna be very hard. It's hard to want to stay peaceful at these protests and to continue to do peaceful protests, but you cannot become violent first. And I know that people have already died, that people are being hurt, like the killing of Renee Goods and Alex Preddy, or the deaths of Luis Yanez Cruz, Paradilla, I'm pretty sure I said that right, and Victor Diaz, right? These are also deaths that either happened because of ICE or at their facilities, right? That have happened just recently, this year alone, in the months of both January and February has barely even started. And I get that it is really easy to want to be violent with them because of the aggressive manner in which both Border Control and ICE are coming at protesters and coming at us, the general public, right? How they are very militarized, but it is very important that you stay as calm as you can and you continue to peacefully protest. It is incredibly important that you, because if you do that, you become the sympathetic side, not just to the people of this country, because the people of this country largely agree with you, but to the rest of the world as well, which is who you need to support you at the moment. You already have the support of the country. You need the support of the rest of the world, right? Which is very important at the moment. You need to gain their support, and the way that you do that is you do not become violent first, especially because the administration and those agents, they want you to fight them. Okay, they are being aggressive, they are going overboard, they are doing this on purpose to try to get that reaction out of the general public to start to attack them first. Now, if you want to throw back a pepper spray canister that they threw at you first, that's fine. That is protecting yourselves against them, right? But you cannot bring your own pepper spray canisters and start throwing them at them. Also, do not incentivize other people to start becoming violent at these protests. Do not do that. Do not share around media that encourages other people to be violent at these protests. It is important that the people at large stay peaceful until the other side gives you a very good reason as to why you cannot stay that way any longer. It is important that you wait for now to do anything. Eventually, it will become time to do that, but the hope is that they will come to their senses before then, right? Also, if you attack them right now as it is, they will make it as a justification as to why they are harming and attacking and going after these protesters the way that they are. They're going to use it as a justification, and they're also going to try to label all of you, as they currently already are doing, right, as domestic terrorists. But the problem is, if you start attacking them and you start becoming violent towards them, all you're doing is proving them right. So if you stay peaceful and they mark you as a domestic terrorist, but you haven't done anything to them and they have punched you in the face, they look bad, right? Right now, this is a PR thing, right? You need to keep that in mind of you want to be the sympathetic looking person in the situation versus them, right? Because they already don't have the sympathy of the country because of the things they are doing, right? But you do not want them to start justifying their attack upon other people based upon violent protests that could pop up or could happen, right? You would lose a lot of your support that you currently have. So you really don't want to do that, right? A lot of the people that currently support you, as we have seen in the past, the moment a protest becomes more violent or becomes more like a riot, you will lose a lot of support from a lot of people in the country, both on the liberal and the conservatives side. Right now, you have both of their support, but if it becomes more of a violent protest before things escalate further, they are going to lose their support, right? You will lose their support very quickly, as we have seen that has happened in the past, right? With other protests and other things that have happened, even just in the last like couple of years, like with 2020, when you had the George Floyd protests that eventually turned into riots. People use those riots as a reason to justify what happened to George Floyd, right? A lot of people on those both liberal and conservative sides that didn't want any issues within their country use those as a justification as to why it was wrong for people to protest or why it was okay for people to be as violent or aggressive with those protesters as they were being, right? So just something to keep in mind and to kind of just try to avoid, right, as we are going through all of these protests and making a good, because right now you have a very good movement going on at the moment, and it's important that we keep that momentum going. You don't want to lose any part of that number by escalating things too quickly, right? It's not that you can never escalate things, but right now is not the time, and it would not be a good strategic play to currently move that along at the moment as it is. But it is important that we continue to protest, especially with the No Kings protest, because this country is largely becoming authoritarian, as we are seeing. I'm going to be making some other videos about some of the current bills that are passing, like the SAVE Act, that would make it increasingly difficult for women to vote, especially women, people who have been adopted, or any of those types of people to vote in these elections, right? Because the moment that you are not allowed to vote, the easier it is for them to repeal everything else that gives us all rights, correct? So I'm going to be making some videos about that really soon, and it is important that we as a people remember that we cannot afford to bow to these pressures that be. Otherwise, we are going to lose everything that we built this country to be for so long. And we are already losing a lot of those things already. So it is important that we as a people stand up to the 1% that wants to make this country an authoritarian regime. Otherwise, we are going to lose the country that we so hardly fought for and have loved for generations. All right. And that's where I'm going to leave this video for today. Bye, guys.